We've literally been dealing with issues like this since the day we met, which is that, in graduate school, Dr. Muhammad was pulled over by a police officer in New Jersey. We both went to Rutgers at the time. I didn't know him. I just knew there was this only other black man in the program. And I literally told him, we have to get along. And so I was like, I don't know if I like him or not, but I'm gonna like him. And it turned out that it was fortunate that we did really get along, although I wasn't quite sure about after this particular day, which is that he decides he's going to go down to the precinct and let it be known that he was not happy with the way in which he had been racially profiled, and he enlists me to go down to the precinct with him. And in the midst of people explaining, because I think they were not surprised, you're supposed to take your racial profiling and like it. And in the midst of this, his officers explaining, why they pull people over when they do, and so on. And Khalil says, he gives this long explanation of numbers and traffic stops and so on. And Khalil said, really? Because I just thought it was racist cops. And I was like, oh, I like this guy, But I'll take a different tack on this, which is that we discussed this generational thing. It's not a new discussion. As a matter of fact, it's a discussion that goes back to emancipation, where the generation of people who were born freeborns, people who were born outside of slavery, and there was this question about whether or not they understood the implications of being black in this country because they had never been in bondage and they had a different relationship to the world. When people talk about the Harlem Renaissance and the New Negro movement, this is a generation of people, the first time demographically, the majority of the black population had been born outside of slavery. And so that's part of what we're talking about. And people are going, well, these people we're not sure about them. And then the Great Migration, people are saying, well, these are people who don't understand what the South is. These are people who have never been in a cotton field. We're not sure that they understand the legacy and what we've been going through and how tenaciously we've had to fight to defend our humanity just in order to ensure that they could live and exist. And then that generation was concerned about the tactics that the civil rights generation was concerned with, was advocating. The NAACP wasn't crazy about Martin Luther King's nonviolent direct action. It was saying people should be involved in the courts. But that nonetheless worked itself out. And then, for the generation that I belong to, the so-called hip-hop generation, we had concerns with the civil rights generation. But I believe that those concerns, even as they're kind of antagonistic sometimes, what there is a kind of antagonistic collaboration in which those two things work together. These two things can have tensions within them, but ultimately kind of form a synthesis in which we move forward. The reason I say this is that were that not the case, we've had generational divides before. We would never have been able to launch a sustained attack on white supremacy. Mm-hmm. And that's what, from 1619, when those 20 Africans first arrived here and decided they didn't like the nature of their relationship to those colonies at this point, that has been the consistency in our relationship to this country. So I tend to look at these things optimistically. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean I can't look at them critically. Now, as it pertains to Ferguson, there were some generational issues that were there, but what was most important to me, what I found most inspirational, is that in a very short period of time, you could see people teaching themselves the fundamentals of grassroots organizing. Mm-hmm. So the people who were in this community, and these were young people, the people who were in this community who knew Michael Brown began saying, we have to have a vigil. And then that vigil became a protest. And then that protest became an uprising. And then that uprising laid the seeds for what's now becoming a movement. And this is happening visibly. We can watch this happen. And so I was heartened to see that. And I saw that there were some older community organizers who were saying, well, this is what we did, this is what happened here, so on and so forth. I did see some of that collaboration. Of course, there were people who were saying that these young people are the reason why things like that happened to Michael Brown, completely misplaced, a kind of moral cowardice in the face of white supremacy. That's what we always do. We can see, oh, well, as opposed to attacking the structure, which appears to be kind of impermeable, impregnable, it's easier to just attack someone else who's a victim of the structure. And so there was some of that. But I think that overall, looking at the fact that I was there, for the time I was there, it was blazing hot. There were people marching in that unforgiving Midwestern heat. At some points, it was nearly 100 degrees, marching, saying, Michael Brown, hands up, don't shoot. People were tear gassed, and they came out the next night and marched more. People were attacked, they were hit with batons, everything that people could do. There was a thunderstorm on my last night there, and I mean a big sky opens up, lightning bolts, thunderstorm. And one of the most inspirational things I saw in Ferguson was that there was this delegation of people, led by young people, marching in front of the area, the kind of street that leads to the area where Michael Brown was shot, marching in this downpour, refusing to be deterred, saying that no matter what you do, we're going to be out here making sure people know that Michael Brown should not have died.